Order. I'm told that the Minister is on her way, so we'll proceed with because we have so many people who want to speak. So can I remind you to bob in your places if you are intending to make a speech, to give us a fighting chance of working out how long you've got to speak. It looks like we'll be an average of 3 minutes each for backbench speeches once we start. No Minister in sight yet, so we'll go on. Order. Clive Jones to move the motion.
I declare an interest as a Governor of the Royal Berkshire Hospital and also a family member has shares in a medical company. I'm grateful to the Backbench Business Committee for allowing this debate, which I first asked for 6 months ago.
Whose fault is that?
Do apologise.
It was the Minister.
There was a Minister apologising. I'm grateful to the Backbench Business Committee for allowing this debate, which I first asked for 6 months ago. Although you might say 1 month before the probable publishing of a national cancer plan is not a bad date for a debate. I would also like to thank the Less Survivable Cancers Task Force, Cancer Research UK and Myeloma UK for their help and guidance in securing and preparing for this debate. As I've mentioned many times here and in the Chamber, I am a cancer survivor. And this experience has shown me how important early diagnosis and effective treatment is to our outcomes. My diagnosis was delayed, having been sent away by a GP. The first GP that I saw, and had to wait several months again before being diagnosed with breast cancer. Unfortunately, my treatment was successful, but for many others, they are not so lucky, especially those with less survivable cancers. In the UK, every year, 90,000 people are diagnosed with a less survivable cancer. Cancers of the brain, liver, lungs, pancreas, esophagus, and stomach. Together, they represent 40% of all cancer deaths and account for 67,000 deaths every year in the UK. The less survivable cancers have been overlooked for far too long. While many other cancers have seen major advancements in survival rates for these 6 cancers have remained staggeringly low for the last 25 years. The collective 5-year survival rate for these cancers is just 16%. The sad reality of the 90,000 people diagnosed with one of these cancers, 75,000 will not survive more than 5 years. That's a school play someone won't see, a set of exam results that they will miss, a first day at university or graduation someone won't be seeing, or perhaps a significant birthday of their own or a loved one, or the birth of a grandchild. It is vital. I'll give way.
Thank the honourable member for giving way and congratulate him on securing this debate, particularly in the circumstances that he's outlined from a personal perspective. He outlines the need for early diagnosis, quite rightly. Does he agree with me that that is particularly true of those of us who are males, where there is an extreme reluctance sometimes to go to a GP to ascertain what may be wrong, and that needs to be addressed urgently?
It does. And the more I think that people like me and others who have survived cancer talk about our experience of experiencing a delay in having cancer spread, then that will help others to come forward. I'll give way to you too.
I thank the honourable member very much for giving way and congratulate him on securing this debate and also the excellent speech he's making. He mentioned that the government has said it will shortly be publishing the National Cancer Plan to include details of how the government will improve outcomes for patients, speed up diagnosis and treatment, ensure patients have access to new treatments and technology, and above all, improve cancer survival rates. Would the honourable member agree that it's absolutely critical that the plan also features key measures to address less survivable cancers, including supporting the rollout of innovative detection tests, evaluate their use, support campaigns to raise awareness of symptoms and produce a strategy for earlier and faster diagnosis.
The honourable member makes a very, very good intervention. He's absolutely right. We do need to be making sure that there is that this is covered in the National Cancer Plan. And I have to say, from what I'm hearing, that I'm optimistic that it is going to be covered. Very quickly.
My constituent, Fiona Tweedy, asked me to attend this debate because she sadly lost her husband to a brain tumour last year. And she asked me to flag, in relation to the National Cancer Strategy, the fact it's very difficult in Scotland to access clinical trials. And if you're based in Scotland, you can't access English trials either. So does the honourable member agree with me? This needs to be a national, a genuinely national strategy, and not allow different parts of the UK to take different directions.
Again, the honourable member makes a very good point. We definitely need to have more clinical trials in this country. I think we've been lagging behind the last few years, and nationally, rather than just Scotland, Wales or England, Northern Ireland, would be advantageous for drug companies and for the people who are going to benefit from these trials. For many of these cancer survival rates in the UK lag behind other countries. We can see from our international colleagues, including Australia, Belgium, Denmark and the US, that progress is achievable and system reform can play a key role in driving better patient outcomes. For example, the UK is ranked 29th out of 33 countries for pancreatic cancer survival. It is a fair question to ask the Minister, why is the UK ranked so low? It's also a fair question to ask the Conservative Shadow Minister why we are ranked so low after their 14-year in government. Perhaps this is due to the challenges in how our healthcare and cancer services are organised and our service delivery rather than the availability of treatment options. It is therefore vital that we learn from our international counterparts and understand what systemic changes they have made to drive progress. The APPG on less survivable cancers, of which I am a member, launched an inquiry into earlier detection and faster diagnosis. During the inquiry, the APPG heard from people with lived experience, clinicians, researchers, charities, and the industry about what vital measures are needed in the National Cancer Plan to improve earlier detection and faster diagnosis. The APPG found that if earlier diagnosis rates were doubled, an additional 7,500 lives would be saved every year. Deaths from these cancers could quickly be reduced by 10%. Faster diagnosis is integral to saving lives and improving outcomes for people impacted by less survivable cancers. Simply, it enables patients to access treatment and care much quicker, increasing their chances of survival. Currently, we are far from achieving this. Just 28% of less survivable cancers are diagnosed at stage 1 or 2, compared to 54% for all other cancers. Concerningly, brain tumours are diagnosed in emergency settings, which is closely linked to worse outcomes. This is common for myeloma patients and incurable blood cancer. A third of people with myeloma are diagnosed via emergency presentation. Like the delay in diagnosing less survivable cancers, this means that their cancer has progressed untreated and the condition has become more advanced, so their ability to tolerate treatments may be seriously hampered. The APPG's inquiry did produce some recommendations for the government, which illustrate a broad range of actions needed to achieve earlier detection and faster diagnosis. From equipping GPs with better tools and rolling out targeted screening programs to promoting greater research into innovative diagnostics. We must... I'll give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way and commend him on securing this invaluable debate. My constituent, Billy, was just 4 years old when he passed away due to DIPG, an incurable child brain tumour cancer. Every 9 days, a child is diagnosed with this. In that debate, at the request of Billy's parents, I asked the government if there was any more they could do for brain cancer research. I'm delighted that the government has announced since then that they've allocated 13.7 million in funding of the NIHR to brain tumour research. Does my honourable friend agree with me that allocating research into these rarer cancers not only benefits the children who suffer from these horrific diseases, but also enhances our research and development capability more broadly, clinically, which is also a vital industry for the UK?
Shorter, and if you're on the list to speak, it would be very helpful if we can fit everyone else in, if you would save the interventions and save it for your speech. Clive Jones.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I'm really sorry to hear about young Billy. But 13.7 million being put into research has really got to be welcomed, and we should be thanking the government for doing that. The first recommendation is to invest in greater research, detection tests and tools to support GPs when identifying symptoms of less survivable cancers. GPs face difficulties in identifying vague symptoms linked to less survivable cancers, especially as they only see a small number of cases each year, and many of the symptoms overlap with less serious health conditions. For example, a patient with esophageal cancer might suffer from nausea and have difficulty breathing. I saw this lack of exposure firsthand. The first GP that I saw did not think that as a man I would be able to have breast cancer. Patients often visit their GP multiple times before being referred to for further diagnostics tests. For example, currently people with pancreatic cancer visit their GP between 2 and 5 times before being referred for a CT scan. GPs lack the necessary detection tools and tests to be able to easily identify vague symptoms earlier. But it doesn't have to be this way. Innovative technologies such as Dexcover for brain cancer and Sister Sponge for esophageal cancer are already in development and can help healthcare professionals to identify these cancers earlier and more easily. The second recommendation is to bring together research and medical communities and establish centres of excellence for each of the less survivable cancers as key forums for knowledge sharing and collaboration. Collaboration between researchers and the medical community is essential for enhancing innovation and for successfully embedding new diagnostic tools into the health system. Centres of excellence can connect specialists across research and clinical sectors, bolstering knowledge sharing and enhancing collaboration. Centres of excellence should be established by the national research community and supported by the Department of Health and Social Care and the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. There should also be more collaboration with colleagues across the world. Thirdly, we had to develop a centralised nationwide case-finding programme to proactively identify high-risk individuals across multiple cancer types, building on the work already undertaken by the NHS in the new onset diabetes and weight loss. To achieve faster diagnosis, we must expand efforts to identify those at high risk of developing a less survivable cancer across the country. As I've already said today, many healthcare professionals say every day of the week, when cancer is detected earlier, we significantly increase patients' chances of survival. This is particularly true for liver cancer. When detected earlier, nearly 50% of patients with liver cancer survive over 5 years, compared to only 5% of those who are diagnosed at stage 4. For those diagnosed with less survivable cancers, faster access to treatment is absolutely critical. Treatment delays cost lives. It is true of all cancers, but particularly for less survivables, which progress rapidly and require specialised treatment and care. National Cancer Plan must offer a crucial opportunity to tackle the systemic barriers which are currently preventing patients from getting faster access to treatment, variation in patient pathways, lack of diagnostic capacity, and shortages across our specialist oncology and supportive care workforce have all contributed to poor access to treatment for patients affected by these cancers. 3 in 4 hospitals are currently failing to meet their cancer waiting time targets. According to analysis from The Guardian, 73% of trusts are failing to meet their 62-day cancer waiting time standard. One statistic that I repeat time and time again is that not a single NHS trust has met the 62-day target since 2015. That's a failure that has been allowed to exist for 10 years. Again, it is a fair question to ask the Conservative shadow spokesperson why this has been allowed to happen whilst they were in government for so long. This issue is felt more acutely for the less survivable cancers, which already have some of the lowest treatment rates. For instance, 70% of people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer receive no active treatment. There is a similar picture at the Royal Berkshire Hospital, where many of my constituents are patients. In 2024 alone, over 70% of stomach cancer patients, 58% of those with pancreatic cancer, 69% of esophageal cancer patients waited more than 62 days from urgent GP referral to treatment, far above the NHS's target of 85%. Some Royal Berkshire Hospital patients are left waiting more than 4 months, and in extreme cases over 6 months for treatment to begin. This is not acceptable. To improve access to treatment, the government should set tumour-specific standards through the modern service framework that we have committed to in the NHS 10-year plan, starting with the cancers with the poorest operational performance. This must include establishing minimum standards and clearer strategic priorities to support local delivery of pathway improvements for cancer. The best way of achieving this would be to develop a national standardised optimal pathways across the whole patient journey for different types of cancer. Where already available, these should be based on existing insight from the national clinical audits and get it right first time programmes. To achieve maximum impact, the government must make sure that 62-day cancer waiting time targets are met and then reduce them to much less than 62 days, because the current standard is too low for rapidly increasing cancers like less survivable cancers. It is crucial as we would ensure more people would be well enough to tolerate treatment. Research and development is also important, part of improving treatment effectiveness and diagnostics. Research into less survivable cancers has historically been underfunded. This has to change. This is recognised by clinicians and many others. Isla, a constituent of my honourable friend, the member for North East Fife, has started a petition calling for more funding in research for pancreatic cancer and has attracted over 200,000 signatures. Poor survival outcomes result in fewer patients taking part in clinical trials and studies, which in turn contributes to fewer breakthroughs and less research investment, a vicious cycle that can and must be broken. Consistent, sustained research is crucial for delivering breakthroughs. The Rare Cancers Bill, currently progressing through Parliament, has the potential to transform research into less survivable cancers. And I must thank the Honourable Member for Edinburgh South West for sponsoring this bill and for all his work on cancer policy. He is a true champion for cancer in this Parliament. A Rare Cancers Bill is a truly groundbreaking piece of legislation that has the potential to deliver the essential research investment and focus needed to unlock breakthroughs and drive better patient outcomes. If passed, the bill would ensure there's a named lead in government with the responsibilities to support research and innovations for these cancers. It can improve patient access to relevant research and clinical trials. and place a duty on the government to review and reform orphan drug regulations to incentivise greater research into treatments for rare cancers. In conclusion, the government needs to act now to improve survival outcomes for less survivable cancers. Investment and reform needs to happen in order to speed up diagnosis and improve treatment, and investment into research is also essential to reaching this aim. With upcoming legislation on cancer care, there is a real opportunity for the government to act now, to be bold and erase the failure of the previous government to prioritise cancer diagnosis, treatment, care and outcomes. The Minister will know from the coming debate that I and many other colleagues here today, and many who aren't able to attend today, will be watching her actions, the actions of the Secretary of State for Health, the actions of the Chancellor and the actions of the Prime Minister, and we will be expecting results and massive improvements in the coming years. Thank you.
Well, before I call Paula Hamilton, I just want to say we're going to stick with a 3-minute limit, but it is very tight. It may mean that I have to shave a minute or two off the front bench speeches at the end so I can get everybody in, but we'll see how it goes. The question is that the House has considered less survivable cancers. Paula Hamilton.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking the Honourable Member for Wokingham for securing today's debate and for his tireless work in campaigning for better outcomes for all those affected by the least survivable cancers. For too long, these cancers have been neglected and left behind. Patients and their loved ones have had to bear the devastating costs alone. As Chair of the APPG on least survivable cancers, I am urging the Government to make this a reality by prioritising improving early diagnosis for these cancers in the plan. These 6 cancers, brain, lung, esophagus, pancreas, stomach and liver, remain some of the toughest to diagnose. For decades, GPs have struggled to identify the vague symptoms linked with these cancers without the necessary diagnostic tools and tests to support their early diagnosis. Tragically, this means more than 70% of patients are diagnosed and at an advanced stage and face the heartbreaking news that it's too late. Targeted screening plays a vital role in accelerating early detection and faster diagnosis, as we see through the successes in the NHS lung cancer screening programme. In addition to targeted screening, we want to see the government roll out the nationwide multiple cancer case finding programme to proactively identify people with high risk of developing cancer. I know personally just how heartbreaking cancer, like pancreatic cancer, can be. Survivable cancers can be, and the difference early detection would make. Like many of my colleagues here today, I have seen firsthand the impact of these deadly cancers on individuals, family and loved ones. I lost my best friend in 2021. Pauline was a very vibrant woman and looking forward to getting married. Later that year, she felt unwell, but she had been to the doctor numerous times and no connection was made to cancer. She was busy planning her wedding, but due to her weight loss and continued generalized pain, she went back to the doctor, and at this point, they told her that she had stage 4 pancreatic cancer and she had 8 weeks to live. She lived for 6 weeks and then she died. What gives me hope is that the transformative role that research can play in driving early diagnosis, such as the new breast test being developed by researchers at Imperial College. As it stands, 2 in 5 people with pancreatic cancer will be diagnosed quite late. They will see their doctors but not get a diagnosis. And I hope that the Rare Cancers Bill and the National Cancer Plan will help to drive greater investment into innovation and research. I feel confident that we can deliver bigger breakthroughs and better outcomes across these 6 cancers. Progress is within our reach. Now it is time to act for all those affected today and in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Steph Acheron.
Thank you, Chair, and I congratulate my honourable friend for working on securing this debate. He's a truly committed campaigner on cancer care. Over previous decades, we've managed to achieve great progress in cancer care and survival. Many now have high survival rates, straightforward detection and treatment, and can allow survivors to live long and happy lives. However, this is not across the board, and the less survivable cancers are the prime examples of this. Survival rates have remained stubbornly low, treatment rates are shockingly low, and if the situation that faces someone diagnosed with these less survivable cancers is often unacceptable. So what I want to raise today is how these deadly cancers and access to care for them impacts people in rural communities like mine. Every day these cancers go undetected, reduces the likelihood of survival, but too many of my constituents either struggle to secure a GP appointment or may have trouble in navigating our ailing transport system to attend it. For those who've been diagnosed and are receiving specialist treatment, this will likely require journeys outside of North Norfolk into the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital or into Addenbrooke's, even in Cambridge. And I've warmly welcomed the ability for Cromer Hospital to deliver chemotherapy to more than 30 patients a day in their new cancer centre. But there's still only one cancer treatment available within my constituency. Additionally, our loss of convalescence care beds in my area means there are fewer opportunities for people to recover from major treatments closer to home. Looking to the future, I'm pleased to see the new diagnostic tools and treatment options which have been brought forward by talented researchers across the country. The revolutionary breath test for pancreatic and other less survivable cancers could be a real game changer. But I do have concerns that when these new and revolutionary tools and treatments are rolled out, rural areas like North Norfolk may wait longer to receive the benefits. So I hope the Minister can reassure me that her department is working to ensure that any new approved treatments and diagnostic tools will be available in rural communities just as easily as they are in the big cities. I'm grateful to all the charities that make up the Less Survivable Cancers Task Force for their hard work and advocacy for patients and survivors and loved ones who felt overlooked for too long. They also do vital work in making us all aware of the symptoms we should watch out for and when to speak to our GP if something doesn't seem right. I hope that as we come to Less Survivable Cancers Awareness Week, people in North Norfolk will take the time to learn the signs and symptoms, because when we catch these deadly cancers early, lives can be saved.
Thank you, Mr. Jonathan. I would like to thank the Honourable Member for organising this debate. My purpose is to find a cure to glioblastoma brain tumours, the biggest cancer killer of children and adults under 40, with a life expectancy from diagnosis of just 9 months and a 5-year survival rate of 5%. The only way to find a cure to improve outcomes with a cancer that has seen no improvement in 30 years is through drug trials. In the absence of commercial or charitable glioblastoma drug trials, we launched our own trial in memory of my late sister Margaret in July last year. The trial is being run by Dr. Paul Mulholland, who's Europe's leading consultant on glioblastoma, based at University College London. It will include 16 newly diagnosed patients at University College Hospital. This is a pre-surgery immunotherapy trial focused on patients who have received no prior treatment. The drug is given before surgery, allowing the immune system to attack the tumour before it is removed. I'm delighted to confirm that we have already recruited 5 patients, and while the trial remains at an early stage, we're encouraged by the early findings. But this is only the start. It is a journey that has proved extraordinarily difficult and has only been possible because of an alignment of factors that very few will ever encounter. Access to one of Europe's leading clinicians working from a major London teaching hospital alongside a world-class university. A group of my sister's friends who have campaigned tirelessly and raised over £1 million in 2 years. And the engagement and backing of a Secretary of State for Health and Social Care to get the trial over the line. Our ambition is to establish 10 such trials using 10 different immunotherapy drugs. But ultimately, our ability to raise money will end. So can I ask the Minister, how does Dr Mulholland apply for funding to support the programme of trials using repurposed immunotherapy drugs? And would the Minister's team be able to provide a written explanation and link on how a bid can be made to the NIHR to access these funds? It is a straight question, and I would welcome a straight answer.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to serve on your chairship, and a big thank you to the honourable lady gentleman for Wokingham for leading today's debate. It's also good to be here for the purpose of, because next week is the Less Survivable Cancers Awareness Week. It starts on the 12th, and as my party's health spokesman, we often talk about cancer in general, but it's important we shine the light on those that are less survivable and what more we can do to support those whose world has been turned upside down by the impact of these cancers. Those cancers are low survivor are lung, pancreatic, liver, brain, esophageal and stomach. These types of cancer tend to be later diagnosed and will have a 5-year survival rate, often below 16%, so it's a real focus we need to put on this, compared to 50 to 60% for all cancers. Very pleased, as always, to see the Minister in her place. I know that she will reply to all of us with the dedication and responses that we seek. Quick perspective of Northern Ireland, Mr Chairman. 62% of people diagnosed with a less survivable cancer die within 1 year of diagnosis, alongside 10,300 people being diagnosed with cancer each year in Northern Ireland, with around 4,600 deaths annually. Cancer survival in Northern Ireland lags behind many comparable countries, so perhaps for certain devolved regions more must be done to ensure access and intervention is at a parallel to our counterparts across the United Kingdom. So my question to the Minister will be, and I always put it forward, but I think it's important we do it together, that we share our research, we share our ideas, and we share how we can do it better. Queen's University does some fantastic work. The Lung Shot Project, they're involving experts from Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. They've got some £300,000 in funding to study esophageal cancer as well, often described as a forgotten cancer. And I think there are so many variations within the UK found in differences in treatment timing across the United Kingdom. There's a longer average wait to start both chemotherapy and radiotherapy compared to other UK nations in Northern Ireland and other countries abroad. These patterns can suggest that patients in Northern Ireland, unlike those elsewhere in the UK, often start treatment later and receive key therapies less frequently than in higher survival countries. We must invest, I believe, in greater capacity for CT, for MRI, for endoscopy, etc., to ensure detection is able to occur. Nobody should be made to play a postcode lottery for their health. To conclude, less survivable cancers do not have to mean less priority, less urgency, less hope. Behind every statistic is a person, a parent, a partner, a sibling, a friend, whose life was cut short, not because their cancer was untreatable, but because it was found too late. So we can do, if we're going to do something, then we have to do ensure there's the correct funding, the correct research, the correct incentive, not just for the mainland, but for collectively for everyone across the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Richard Hurley.
To serve under your chairmanship. Less Survivable Cancers Awareness Week is an important marker in the calendar, but I want to talk about another important marker when it comes to these cancers, important for me and my family anyway, because this year marks 20 years since I was made unavoidably aware of the devastation of esophageal cancer in particular. In May of that year, my father developed the classic symptoms: difficulty swallowing, feeling like food was getting stuck, heartburn, weight loss. He was diagnosed in August and died on the 23rd of December. From becoming symptomatic to losing his life was just 7 months. The rapidity of the decline was overwhelming. Barely had he been diagnosed than he was given a terminal diagnosis. I must admit, though, I wasn't giving my father my full attention during this time. In almost any other circumstances, I would have been a much more dutiful son. But my own focus was elsewhere that year. Because on the 1st of August 2006, my wife Susan also became symptomatic with esophageal cancer. She was diagnosed on the 11th of September and died on the 14th of November. The speed with which I read that sentence reflects the speed with which Sue died. There was barely any chance to understand what was happening, or to seek help, or for the family to manage. Now, that's not unusual with these sorts of diseases. It's the sort of story that thousands of us know. Crucially for my own Southport constituency, it's also a story that disproportionately impacts people from the North West and from North Wales. For my own family, there wasn't any long fight, there was no slow decline, there was only shock, confusion, urgent decisions and death. That's what a less survivable cancer looks like. So can I make a clear ask of the Minister today? I'm asking for a personal commitment and a commitment across government to drive up survival rates for all of these less survivable cancers, and specifically for my personal history and for the geographical distribution that shows that my part of the country has higher levels than elsewhere in the UK, most urgently for esophageal cancer. This could mean things like early diagnosis, recognising that one size fits all doesn't work. It could mean fast-track treatment pathways once suspicion is raised. But I think above all else, it should include serious investment in experimental and pre-symptomatic techniques, finding ways to detect cancers before symptoms even appear. These are difficult cancers to deal with, and I think that's why they need targeted action. I'm here today because 2 people I loved didn't get the help they needed, and so I urge government to help other families avoid that same fate.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you so much to the Honourable Member from Southport for that really moving account. We know that cancer affects all of us. In my family, it claimed my mum Lynn, my sister-in-law Lisa and my stepmum Sally have both beaten it, and now my dad Ray is living with terminal cancer. One of my team is also undergoing treatment for cancer, so we know that it is prevalent among all of our lives. All of them were fit, healthy people who did everything right, as are so many other people who get the horrible news each year, or worse, who turn up in A&E after becoming suddenly unwell. According to a cancer research study, many of those patients had visited their GP, but hadn't been referred for tests, either because they didn't meet the thresholds or because they'd been missed altogether. Let me be clear, this is not a criticism of our GPs, who are working in highly difficult situations. Indeed, when I shadowed Dr Wright from Walford Mills Surgery in Wimborne, he had the sober task of sharing a diagnosis and undertaking a very personal test during his appointment that he let me witness. But for the 6 least survivable cancers, if diagnosis doubled across these 6 cancers alone, an additional 7,500 lives a year would be saved. In my constituency of Mid Dorset and North Pool, there are 540 diagnoses of cancer each year and 300 cancer deaths. And although 85% of them should be starting treatment within 62 days, the number is actually only 60%. So I want to ask the Minister what she's doing to bridge that gap. Because if we met the target in my constituency, 70 additional people would be getting on with their lives. 45,000 additional people across the country would be given a greater chance of not just surviving, but having a life shared with those that they love. But once they get to hospital, patients are faced with out-of-date machinery and not enough specialist nurses. Macmillan Cancer Research says that there is an acute shortage and have called for a cancer nurse fund to increase the numbers by 3,700. So will the Minister tell us whether the future cancer strategy will include such funding? I want to just speak briefly about pancreatic cancer, which claimed the life of my cousin Colin, a super fit former Welsh Commonwealth Games cyclist who died in his 50s despite the best care available. Many other constituents have written to me about poor prognosis for this treatment. They have flagged that the NHS has approved selective internal radiation therapy, but only for colorectal and liver cancers, not those whose primary cancer is in the pancreas and has then spread to the liver. These families are keen for urgent trials to be undertaken to allow the treatment to be used, given the incredibly short life expectancy they face. So will the Minister consider this? Finally, I just want to make the point that we have been waiting such a long time for this cancer strategy. We need the workforce plan and the roadmap for the NHS plan. 950 people will be diagnosed with cancer today, and those people need hope.
Yeah. Paul Davies.
47% of cancers diagnosed in the UK are rare and less common cancers, and 55% of deaths are from rare and less common cancers. This means that every year around 180,000 people will be diagnosed with a rare and less common cancer, and more than 92,000 people will die from such cancers. Blood cancer is one of these cancers, and I recently met with the Blood Cancer Alliance to discuss improving access to life-saving blood cancer treatments across the UK. Over 280,000 people in the UK are living with blood cancer, and every year 40,000 more receive a diagnosis, including 5,000 children. It's the 5th most common cancer, the most prevalent childhood cancer, and the 3rd biggest cancer killer in our country. Yet, despite amazing advances in treatment, our outcomes are falling behind other nations. And the reason is clear. Systemic barriers within the NHS and NICE appraisal processes are preventing patients from accessing innovative therapies. Between 2019 and 2025, over a third of NICE appraisals for new blood cancer treatments were terminated, more than double the rate for other cancers. And these are not ineffective drugs. Many are available overseas and even privately in the UK. This creates a two-tier system where those who can pay receive better care than those who cannot. This is unacceptable. I've been told that treatments like CAR-T therapy can transform lives, extending survival and improving quality of life. But the current system, with rigid cost-effectiveness thresholds and inflexible commercial frameworks, is failing patients. That's why I warmly welcome the UK government's cancer plan. This plan represents a vital opportunity to reset our approach to cancer care and ensure that innovation is embraced, not obstructed. By prioritising timely access to effective treatments and addressing systemic barriers, the cancer plan can help deliver world-class outcomes for patients. I stand with the Blood Cancer Alliance and Cancer 52 in calling for urgent joined-up action from government, NICE, the NHS and industry. Together, we can ensure that every person with blood cancer has timely access to the best possible care, because survival should never depend on postcode or income.
Thank you, Mr Efferdon. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and can I thank the Honourable Member for Wokingham for securing this really important debate. And what's very clear is that all of us are touched by one way or another from those that we've loved or those that we are fond of that have passed away, unfortunately, from a cancer diagnosis. And whilst any debate covering cancer is, of course, serious, today's debate is, of course, poignant for me. Just before Christmas, Keighley and the Worth Valley lost 2 councillors to cancers, friends of mine, who I know that both of their losses will be felt not only by their families and friends, but by constituents and residents that they served and the communities that they loved. Councillor Russell Brown, who served the Worth Valley as a district councillor on Bradford Council, and Chris Graham, a former Keighley Town councillor who served the Longley and Parkwood wards. Whilst any death to cancer is tragic, it also sharpens our focus on the need to ensure that the very best treatments and research is available for as many people as possible. And that, of course, includes rare cancers, less survivable cancers. By their very nature, of course, do not receive the same level of attention as more common types. But this must change. Let's start with the need to identify and screen cancers early. It is unacceptable that just 28% of less survivable cancers are diagnosed at stage 1 or 2, compared to 54% of all cancers. I'm sure that a similar story will be true to rarer cancers, which may not be considered until it is just too late. Here I must thank the work of the Mobile Cancer Screening Unit, who operate in Keighley and Ilkley at the Airedale Hospital. They are doing life-saving work, and I hope that as we rebuild a new Airedale Hospital over the coming years, they will have a new and improved hospital to be proud of, further boosting their work. The UK should be proud of its world-leading cancer research, and I know that this is something that both the opposition and government colleagues agree on. Indeed, the agreement on the Rare Cancers Bill is a hugely positive step to ensuring that rare cancers get the attention that they deserve, and I would like to thank the Honourable Member for Edinburgh South West for the work that he has done on raising this really important issue. After all, rare cancers are 1 in 5 of diagnosed cancers, and that must change. Of course, there will inevitably be cases where screening and improved treatment are not enough, and at that stage, people across Keighley, Ilkley, Silsden and the Worth Valley are indebted to Sue Ryder Manorlands Hospice. Manorlands do excellent work, looking after those at the end of their lives, and I'm routinely impressed by their professionalism and compassion whenever I visit. So I would like to encourage the Minister in my final wind-up just to raise an issue to do with the employer's national insurance, a case case that was raised to me by Sue Ryder Manaland's hospice, in that they are now having to pay an additional amount to the Treasury, of which they are not now able to put in end-of-life care. And I'd like her to specifically raise this case with the Chancellor as we go forward, so we can make sure that hospices get the attention that they deserve and the funding that they need.
Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under you today. And I do want to thank the member for Wokingham for bringing forward this debate just a week ahead of Less Survivable Cancers Awareness Week. The 6 less survivable cancers of brain, liver, lungs and pancreas, esophagus and stomach take 67,000 lives every year. That's equivalent of 2 people every week in each UK constituency, so it's a non-trivial amount of people. And the survival rate at 5 years is just 16%. And so for many people getting a diagnosis of one of these cancers, it must feel like a death sentence. Too often, people with these cancers are diagnosed late. Only 28% of less survivable cancers are diagnosed at stages 1 and 2, compared to 54% of cancers overall. And too many diagnoses are made in emergency departments where treatment choices are limited. And more broadly, we should never forget that if you're female or from an ethnic minority, you're much more likely to be diagnosed of cancer in E&E, which is absolutely shameful. We know what change would look like. If we were able to double early diagnosis across these 6 cancers, we could save an additional 7,500 lives every single year. This should be our goal. And this is why I am proud that this government is focused on prioritising early detection and faster diagnosis. And I'm really pleased to see this Minister with us today. I think the member for West Lancashire is someone who's respected and trusted by the wider sector to deliver against this agenda as part of the cancer plan, which hopefully we'll see next month. This change can be achieved through investing in research, as we've heard from the member for Mitcham and Morden, supporting the rollout of innovative tests such as liquid biopsies and the breast test for pancreatic cancer, which we've seen at the UK Labour Party conference, and expanding proactive case finding for those most at risk. Centres of excellence, better data and stronger national leadership would also be critical. I say this not just as a participant in today's debate, but as a sponsor of the Rare Cancers Bill, as people have already mentioned, and I do thank them for their kind comments, which is designed to help address exactly these gaps. And I brought forward that bill after my father-in-law, Ivor, died of glioblastoma, the cancer type, which the member from Mitcham Morden has dedicated so much of her life to defeating now. And my bill seeks to improve data collection, increase access to clinical trials and strengthen pathways for people with rare and less survivable cancers. These voices are often not heard, the voices of these patients, and I really do hope that in the debate today people do feel that they are heard, and I really do look forward to the Minister's response. Thank you, Chair.
Brian Leishman.
Thank you, Mr Effort. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship today, and thanks also go to the Honourable Member for Wokingham for bringing this debate. Even though health is a devolved matter under Holyrood control, my contribution today will be from a Scottish perspective, because what I want to speak about is the situation of health inequalities that we have in Scotland, and how, like everything does, that it comes down to being a class issue. Shockingly, 61% of people in Scotland who are diagnosed with a cancer of the lung, liver, brain, esophagus, pancreas or stomach die within a year of diagnosis. That's the poorest survival rate from anywhere in the United Kingdom. In 2023, the Scottish Government implemented the 10-year Scottish Cancer Strategy. The strategy outlined 11 ambitions designed to reduce cancer risk, provide faster and earlier diagnosis, improve cancer treatment, make cancer care fit for the future and reduce the differences exacerbated by health inequalities. The most disadvantaged Scots suffer from dire health inequalities. The most deprived areas face higher incidence. Lung cancer shows the largest gap, with risk almost 4 times higher in deprived groups. Later diagnosis, often emergency. People living in deprived areas are 50% more likely to be diagnosed via emergency admission, thus far more likely to miss the earlier and statistically the more successfully treatable stages of cancer. There are also considerable economic barriers to think about. Socio-economic conditions often contribute to lower symptom awareness and knowledge in the first instance, greater issues in accessing and attending appointments, and a higher likelihood of exposure to harmful factors like smoking, alcohol and obesity. Smoking is the biggest cause of cancer in Scotland. We know that smoking is more common in the most deprived populations. In 2019, 32% of people in the most deprived population smoked, compared to 6% in the least deprived. And if we take being overweight and obesity together, then it's the second largest preventable cause of cancer in Scotland. As with smoking, obesity rates are higher in more deprived areas. So, Mr Efford, I appreciate that it will take a huge joined-up approach across several government departments and cross-governmental working to close the shocking health inequalities that we have in Scotland. But if the Minister can give an indication of how the UK Government plan to do this, either in her contribution or perhaps in greater depth by letter to me after this debate, then I'd be most grateful, as would my constituents. Thank you very much.
Serve under your chairship, and I want to congratulate and thank my honourable friend, the member for Wokingham, for securing this vital debate on less survivable cancers. Like many across Parliament and the country, less survivable cancer is a personal fight. My brother-in-law, Group Captain Pip Harding, was diagnosed with glioblastoma 2 years ago, a devastating and aggressive brain tumour. His story illustrates both hope, but still what is profoundly broken. Pip received pioneering oncothermia treatment by Dr Paul Mulholland, already referenced by the member for Mitcham and Morden. But that treatment has shrunk his tumour significantly, going from a prognosis of only 6 months to live with his 5 children and wife, and 2 years on, he is still alive and well. But that treatment remains inaccessible on the NHS. He obtained it through his family and friends crowdfunding the treatment, illustrating how those with the means and community support can access innovation while others cannot. Glioblastoma remains one of the hardest cancers to treat, with little treatment in survival rates compared with many other cancers. We know that research funding for brain tumours has historically lagged behind the need, and it receives a tiny fraction of overall cancer research pounds, a scandal when this disease disproportionately affects younger adults. So I support the honourable members' sterling work for Mitcham and Morden, sterling work on the trials, and echo her ask. In my constituency of East Shortmorton, I have heard from many families whose lives have been turned upside down by rare cancers. One constituent shared the anguish of watching their partners struggle with a less common blood cancer that had no clear trial available in the UK, even though there was promising research underway abroad. These stories are not isolated, they reflect systemic issues, diagnostic delays, and I will bring here my lovely sister Mary, who died just before Christmas. She waited for a diagnosis, was misdiagnosed and died from bowel cancer. Limited trial access and patchy specialist expertise across regions. Just 82.5% of cancer patients in East Shortmorton began treatment within 62 days of an urgent referral, below the operational standard of 85%. Every percent represents the heartbreak my family felt this Christmas. I also want to raise lobular breast cancer, the second most common form of breast cancer, yet the one that remains under-researched and under-supported. One of my constituents, Kate Ford, in collaboration with the Lobular Moonshot Project, has been campaigning for the government to commit £20 million in funding for a dedicated research programme, but after meeting with the Secretary of State in July, the government chose not to commit to this and instead supported a broader research base. But that largely misses the point, because the status quo of research programmes means rare cancers like lobular breast cancer are effectively left behind. Finally, I want to return to brain cancer and Owain's law, which addresses issues where patients lose access to cutting-edge therapies due to improper tissue preservation.
Mr Brinsley.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Evans. It's a pleasure to serve under your chair, and I thank the member for Wokingham for bringing this debate. So cancer remains a most feared word. We doctors have learned to use all sorts of other words, growths, tumours and such like. Relatives who will tell us, don't use that word in front of the patient, for it would simply kill him. But things have changed. Cancers that were considered incurable are now curable, and cancers for which there was no treatment are now treatable. Such is the power of scientific progress, for it is upon science that we will depend. So what exactly is a less survivable cancer? One defined by persistently poor outcomes across all stages, and many have mentioned the 6 with a survival rate at 5 years of only 16%. Now, one such example was my lovely neighbour, who presented last Christmas with loss of vision in one eye. He was found to have secondary lung cancer in the retina, completely incurable, unamenable to any effective treatment, and sadly dead within a few weeks. Now, our country has a very proud record of medical research. After all, it was here that we first discovered the link between cigarettes and lung cancer, when epidemiological studies of British doctors were done in the 1960s. Now, my own dad gave up his pipe when this was revealed. But the greatest act of our new government, I believe, some 60 years later, was to carry out the legislation introduced by the last government to ban cigarette sales, eventually for every citizen. Now, clinical academics are doctors who not only teach the next generation of doctors, but translate also scientific research into clinical applications and the supervision of clinical trials. Now, I did an MD at the UEA for my clinical observation on the genetics of a rare ear disorder, so I understand the difficulties of medical research and also the intrinsic delight which comes with unravelling the mysteries of medicine. Now, this role is particularly critical for less survivable cancers, where progress will only be dependent upon sustained academic leadership on converting research into viable treatment. Now, unfortunately, there has been a serious collapse in the number of clinical academics in our country, with many now approaching retirement and completely insufficient recruitment of young clinical academics. We must address this crisis, starting with the coordination between the health department and the education department, so that there is salary equivalence restored to retain the existing workforce on which our medical science depends. So let's do something we can actually do to make survivable cancer more survivable. This is our political task.
Charlie Maynard.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank my honourable friend for bringing this fantastic debate. I'd also like to thank members in the room for all the work they've done, and I'd like to thank the Minister for how much engagement she has given, particularly the brain cancer team, and I really appreciate that. I come to this, yes, similarly, my sister Georgie has a GBM diagnosed 2.5 years ago. She's well and has survived longer than they gave her, and is fighting like hell for brain cancer justice, with many in this room as well. And I really give praise to her and her colleagues and to so many people in my constituency in Witney who have helped her and suffer across this range of cancers. I'm going to say two things only today. One is I'd like us to explore reforming the Human Tissue Act of 2004 to apply a similar default system we now use nationally for organ donation for tumour tissue. To do this, Parliament would need to amend the Human Tissue Act 2004 to introduce a deemed consent regime for residual tumour tissue and derived data, limited to public interest cancer research, with a statutory opt-out, strict purpose limits, and enhanced oversight by the Human Tissue Authority. The model would mirror the Organ Donation Deemed Consent Act 2019, and that basically means that any of us, if we die, those organs are automatically taken, and if we can opt out, our families can opt out, but they're taken. That we are advocating the same for tumour tissue. Very few of us really want to hang on to our tumour tissue if we are unfortunate to have that situation. That tumour tissue has huge scientific value, and we should be using all of that data as much as we can for the public good. So that's what I'm headed towards here. Denmark is a fantastic model here. They've got a registry-first legal architecture with mandatory health registries covering cancer diagnosis, pathology, genomics, and treatment and outcomes. That's one thing. The second thing is just going back to that doubling survival rates of all less survivable cancers in the next decade. If we can put that mark in the sand as a goal that we are all going to go for, and that gets into the National Cancer Plan, that will create global attention and will drag resources and talent to our cause and to our country. That will be good for our country, good for our patients that suffer, and good for our economy too. So if we could make that a key demand of our National Cancer Plan, that would be a huge plus. Thank you.
Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Efford, and it's a Pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'd like to thank the honourable member for Wokingham for securing this debate, and I'd also like to pay tribute to my honourable friend for Birmingham, Erdington, for all the valuable work she does in this space, and to pay tribute to everyone who's shared very personal stories, in particular my honourable friend, the member for Southport. One of the least survivable forms of cancer is pancreatic cancer. Sadly, I have a number of constituents who write to me about the devastating impact this disease has had on their lives. One who contacted me lost her stepmother to pancreatic cancer. For months, her symptoms were repeatedly misdiagnosed. She was even sent home from A&E on several occasions with painkillers or antibiotics before finally being diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She died just 3 months later, only 3 days after my constituent's son was born. She told me she feels her son was robbed of a grandma. Jackie wrote to me to tell me about her close friend who she lost to pancreatic cancer and the profound effect that this has had on her. Tracy, Irene and Janice also wrote to tell me about the loved ones they tragically lost to pancreatic cancer and to advocate for better research and treatment for this cruel cancer. Each of these stories is different, but each constituent who's written to me about pancreatic cancer has called for improved screening, earlier diagnosis and greater investment in research. Kelly and Jennifer both wrote to me while their loved ones were undergoing treatment for pancreatic cancer because they were forced to deal with shortages of the medication they desperately needed. It's unacceptable that patients and their families must tackle medicine shortages on top of battling cancer. I truly believe this government's 10-year health plan will support patients fighting less survivable cancers by ensuring they have access to new treatments and technology to diagnose cancer earlier. We must ensure these cancers are detected sooner and treated more effectively so fewer families endure the heartbreak of supporting a loved one with a less survivable cancer. And we must, like the Minister has done so well, continue to speak out so people become more aware of symptoms early and seek help and diagnosis. I'd also like to pay tribute in the remaining seconds to my local hospice, the Mary Ann Evans Hospice, who provide care at home for many across my constituency and neighbouring constituencies.
I'd like to bring Mr Jones in for a couple of minutes at the end, so that means that front benches have about eight minutes. Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Mr Efford. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I thank my honourable friend for Wokingham for securing this debate and his tireless advocacy on this subject. In Epsom Newell, there are around 650 new cancer cases every year, around 240 cancer deaths, and the local ICB missed the 62-day treatment target as recently as October 2025. And this is something the Lib Dems have been calling for, as a guarantee that 100% of patients can start treatment within 62 days from urgent referral. Now, it's easy to get lost in the numbers of those who have been diagnosed with cancer, those who haven't survived, the treatment wait times and the performance of hospitals. But behind each number is a person with a story that must be told. My constituent wrote in about her husband who battled pancreatic cancer. Only 1 in 4 people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer survive beyond a year. And in so many cases, her husband's cancer wasn't diagnosed until it had become terminal. He died within 6 weeks of being diagnosed. A recent story shared with me by the British Liver Trust about Jane's husband also highlights powerfully the importance of early diagnosis of liver cancer. Jane's husband was known to be at high risk because of an underlying liver condition and was meant to receive regular surveillance scans. These scans are intended to detect cancer early when treatment options are greater and outcomes can be better. However, delays and disruption to his regular surveillance meant that his cancer was not diagnosed until it was already advanced. Jane believes that had his monitoring continued as planned, her husband's cancer could have been diagnosed at an earlier stage when potentially life-saving treatment and interventions were still possible. Her experience is a clear reminder of the importance of regular surveillance for people who are at risk, so that liver cancer can be detected at the earliest possible stage when lives can still be saved. These stories paint a stark picture for individuals diagnosed with less survivable cancers that there are shockingly poor outcomes. The UK has the highest rate of esophageal cancer in the world, and only 15% of adult esophageal patients survive for 5 years or more. A mere 15% of stomach cancer patients across the country will survive for over 10 years. Liver cancer survival rates have hardly changed in the last decade, and despite the work to tackle smoking, lung cancer still claims the lives of around 91 people every day. Today, on average, the chance of someone surviving for 5 years after being diagnosed with one of the 6 least survivable cancers is only 16%. For the country that discovered penicillin, designed the world's first insulin infusion device, and uncovered the structure of DNA, we are dangerously behind. Research by the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development showed the UK ranked a dismal 31st out of 43 countries for how many people survive at least 5 years after being diagnosed with lung cancer. Across lung cancer survival rates, the UK is below the EU and OECD average, as well as the US, Germany and France. For all the less survivable cancers, survival rates have only increased by a small amount over the last 50 years and all remain below 20%. In my role as Liberal Democrat primary care and cancer spokesperson, I spent time meeting with charities and trying to understand why outcomes for patients with the 6 least survivable cancers are not improving. One resounding reason is research. A response from a question tabled by my honourable friend for Witney reveals that the Department for Health and Social Care's funding for research into each of the less survivable cancers since 2022 is as follows. For lung cancer, 16 million, esophagus cancer, 9.4 million, bladder and stomach cancer received 3 million, liver cancer, 2 million, pancreas, 0.9 million, and brain cancer, 0.6 million. This is pitifully low, considering UK survival rates for many of these cancers are devastatingly behind our international counterparts. And what adds to this frustration is that even after a successful innovation is found, thanks to the tireless work of researchers, implementation is simply far too slow. The Less Survivable Cancer Task Force told me that senior surgeons are reporting the start of a golden time for approaches to cancer, but the UK takes so long to implement any of the innovations and the later stages of clinical trials drag on for too long. For example, a diagnostic test that allows cell changes to be identified for esophageal cancer, called the capsule sponge, has spent 20 years in the research phase. Only last year did the test enter its next trial in certain parts of the country, and whilst this is welcome, progress overall is far too slow. The International Cancer Benchmarking Partnership data shows that in the 1990s, Denmark and the UK were 2 of the worst performers for cancer care. Whilst the UK has made some progress, Denmark has surged ahead. In fact, since 1995, Denmark has seen some of the biggest improvements of any ICBP member, with survival across all 7 ICBP-measured cancer types increasing by more than it has in the UK. One of the key factors has been Denmark's focus on using consistent cancer plans to coordinate investment, drive reform and develop strong clinical leadership. This is exactly why the Liberal Democrats are calling for a Cancer Survival Research Act. This would require the government to coordinate and ensure funding for research into cancers with the lowest survival rates. Alongside this, the expansion of the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency's capacity would halve the time for new treatments to reach patients. Before Christmas, I visited the Shooting Stars Hospice in Guildford and stood in the room where families can grieve next to their children. Many of these children receive palliative care for cancer. Every death is a tragedy, but this was a harrowing reminder of just how quickly and devastatingly cancer takes even the youngest of lives. As we enter this new year, I ask that the Minister makes her resolution to tackle the black hole of research funding for less survivable cancers and speed up the snail-pace implementation of life-saving treatments.
Caroline Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Efford, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning. I'd like to first congratulate the Honourable Member for Wokingham on securing this important debate today. It is sadly the case that 1 in 2 of us will get cancer in our lifetime. We all know someone who is battling cancer, who has beat it, and sadly we all know of someone whose life has been cut short by it. Cancer survival rates have consistently improved, but they are still far from where we would like them to be. As we've heard, when we talk about less survivable cancers, we are referring particularly to 6 types of cancers with low survival rates: pancreatic, liver, brain, esophagus, stomach and lung cancers. Over 90,000 people in the UK are diagnosed with one of the less survivable cancers every year, 20% of cancer cases, but these cancers are responsible for 42% of cancer deaths in the UK. And I pay tribute to those in this House today who've shared their personal stories, because behind each one of these statistics is an individual. And as I've prepared for this debate myself, I thought of my granddad who died of brain cancer, my Nana Burton who died of lung cancer, and my husband's good friend and confidant Richard who died of esophageal cancer. A key reason for the troublingly disproportionate mortality rate for less survivable cancers is their later than average diagnosis. Just 28% of less survivable cancers are diagnosed at stage 1 or 2, which is well below the broader 54% for cancers as a whole. This cuts survival rates significantly. Pancreatic cancer is particularly lethal, with less than 7% of people with pancreatic cancer in the UK surviving beyond 5 years. I'm pleased that the last Conservative government launched the Targeted Lung Health Check programme in June 2022. This led to more than 5,500 people being diagnosed with lung cancer by January 2025, with 75% of those cases found at stage 1 or stage 2 through screening, which is encouraging progress, but there is clearly much more work to be done to improve the diagnosis rate for all 6 less survivable cancers as a whole. I've been supportive of the current government's tobacco and vapes bill, personally, which will ban the sale of tobacco to young people born after 1st of January 2009. This will tackle one of the key risk factors of lung cancer. But I'd ask the Minister to update us on the progress of the bill, because it was introduced in November, 5th of November 2024, and has still not passed through Parliament yet. And prevention is said to be a big focus of the government. So what is the Minister doing to improve prevention and to get this bill passed through Parliament? The APPG on less survivable cancers launched an inquiry into early detection and faster diagnosis in March 2025 and found that doubling early diagnosis could save an additional 7,500 lives a year. What is the Minister doing to implement the recommendations made by the results of this inquiry, which was published last June? In particular, what is she doing to explore the benefits of technology in commissioning new detection tests? What assessment has she made of the new vapor breath test for pancreatic cancer, which could support GPs in diagnosing less survivable cancers from unclear symptoms? I'm hopeful, Mr Efford, that many of the answers to these questions and others posed by honourable members today will be found in the forthcoming National Cancer Plan. The Government has delayed this cancer plan, along with several other of its plans, until 2026. We are now in 2026. Can the Minister confirm when the plan will be published? Rumours were initially swirling that it had been delayed for presentational purposes until February and World Cancer Day, but now there are further rumours that it may not be delayed until early March. Can the Minister give us a date? It is encouraging, Mr Efford, to see that NHS staff carried out over 3 million cancer checks in 2024, double the number carried out a decade prior. But like much of the war against cancer, this is another case of positive progress, but more work needing to be done. And much of this work is dependent on the workforce. The last government built 5 new medical schools, including one in Lincolnshire, which are now producing their first medical graduates. However, British graduates need British jobs, and heavy competition from a surging number of international medical graduates leaves many British graduates without a job. What action is the Minister taking to improve recruitment from British graduates from British medical schools? Can the Minister confirm when the further delayed 10-year NHS workforce plan will be published? Can the Minister assure us that workforce plan, in combination with the long-anticipated cancer plan, will make provisions to increase the number of oncologists, radiologists and specialist cancer nurses across the NHS? As other members have said, research is absolutely critical if we're going to beat cancer, particularly the less survivable cancers where new technology for testing and treatment could save lives. And yet cutting-edge, world-leading research that Britain has had to offer does not feel like the government had its back. Merck scrapped its plans for a £1 billion research centre in King's Cross and plans to make 125 scientists redundant. AstraZeneca halted a £200 million expansion of its research site in Cambridge and abandoned a £450 million vaccine manufacturing investment in Liverpool. Eli Lilly and Sanofi have both expressed frustrations at undervaluation of innovative medicines in the UK. When I raised life sciences in a previous debate on cancer, the Minister said that the government wants to make this country the best place to do life sciences. What support is she providing to businesses in the life sciences and pharmaceutical industries to make this political slogan a reality? What work is she doing with her colleagues in the Department for Science, Innovation, Technology and Business and Trade to revive the lost sciences investment and utilise British research that has the world-class facilities needed to innovate and save lives? As my honourable friend from Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk said, it's important that we work together as the United Kingdom. What work is she doing with our counterparts in Scotland in particular? And as my honourable friend for Keighley and Ilkley raised, there is a growing crisis in the hospice sector. Hospice care provided for those with terminal illnesses, such as some cancers, improves symptom control, comfort and support. It adds lives to days. But there's a growing crisis in the hospice sector. What is the Minister doing to press the Chancellor to recognise that her tax on national insurance is creating a crisis in the hospice sector? And what is she doing to save them from closure in many cases? In summary, Mr Efford, I'm concerned at the absence of definitive government action for the cancer community, which 18 months in remains devoid of a cancer plan and a workforce plan, and continuing to drive critical research out this country. I encourage the Minister to provide some clarity for cancer sufferers, cancer charities and the cancer workforce who are doing such sterling work to improve people's lives, and to get on with innovating life-saving treatment to improve the tragic survival rates for the less survivable cancers.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Efford, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank you and the rest of the members of today for your perseverance in my slight tardy arrival, due, ironically, to the somewhat unpredictable effects of cancer chemotherapy. However, I am well and have enjoyed this debate immensely. Thank you. Before I begin my remarks, I want to pay tribute to all our NHS staff, our care workers and everyone serving our hospices for their work over the Christmas and the New Year period. And I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman, the member for Wokingham, for bringing this debate and also for doing his bit, I understand, to keep up morale at the Royal Berkshire Hospital on Christmas Eve. Thank you to all members, honourable members and right honourable members for their contributions. I acknowledge all of the personal stories from members and those shared of their constituencies. There's been such a wide range of issues raised, and given the time pressures, Mr Efford, I will endeavour to respond to all questions, but any not covered by my remarks, I will endeavour to follow up in writing to the honourable and right honourable members in question following the debate. I'll address each of the issues raised by the member for Wokingham in order. He's right that progress has been uneven across different types of cancer and that less survivable cancers can be difficult to identify, as symptoms may mirror a host of other illnesses. To boost diagnosis of cancers that are harder to catch at an earlier stage, we've rolled out the non-specific symptom, or NSS, pathways, with 115 NSS services now live. NSS pathways provide a referral route for patients whose symptoms don't fit under a specific cancer pathway. They're making diagnosis smoother and faster for patients whose symptoms aren't as clear. This government is proud to support the Rare Cancers Bill brought forward by my honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh South West, and which Baroness Elliott is moving for second reading on Friday next week in the other place. Mr Efford, as a cancer patient myself, I was proud to stand on a manifesto to tackle the biggest killers. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, reaffirmed that pledge just over a year ago through our plan for change. While all cancer survival is the best it's ever been, less survivable cancers have just a 16% 5-year survival rate, accounting for 67,000 deaths a year, and demand is rising. Each day there are around 13,000 urgent referrals for suspected cancer. That's up almost 3,000 per day since 2019. My officials, including those leading on the National Cancer Plan, are carefully considering every one of the APPG's recommendations. And whilst I cannot go into detail today, I can assure members that rare and less survivable cancers will feature heavily in the new cancer plan. This government is asking the NHS, charities and all of my colleagues in this place to join in a new national effort, spearheaded by the National Cancer Plan, which we'll publish in just a few short weeks in early February. There is no truth in the rumour that this is being delayed to March. I can confirm that today. It will cover the entirety of the cancer pathway, from referral and diagnosis to treatment and ongoing care. We want patients to have access to the latest treatments and technology and receive the highest quality of care. Mr Chair, we made genomics one of the 5 big bets in our 10-year plan for health, setting out how we'll harness genomics to create a genomics population health service and support innovation. In July last year, we launched the groundbreaking National Inherited Cancer Predisposition Register, so we can keep track of people who have genes that put them at risk. This brings me to a wider point about diagnostics and primary care. We've introduced Jess's rule, named after Jess Brady, to prompt GPs to investigate further when a patient presents with the same symptoms or concerns more than twice. And we've also boosted community diagnostic centres and invested an extra £889 million in general practice. We're committed to ensuring that GPs have the right training and systems to identify cancer symptoms, and we will continue to support the use of clinical decision support tools. On research and innovation, the Department for Health and Social Care invests over £1.6 billion per year in research through the National Institute for Health and Care Research, the NIHR. And cancer is a major area of NIHR spending at over £141 million in the last financial year. Just last month, the NIHR launched a pioneering new £13.7 million brain tumour research consortium to accelerate research into new treatments. In response to the question from my honourable friend, the member for Mitcham and Morden, I understand the CEO at NIHR, Professor Lucy Chappell, has recently written to the honourable member, and I will follow up in writing in detail to respond to her question and explain the process of submitting a bid to the NIHR in further detail. In 2024, the NIHR and the Office for Life Sciences announced nearly £11 million to support further testing of innovations to help increase the early detection and diagnosis of cancer. This includes funding research into the new breath test for multiple gastrointestinal cancers and looking at how we can roll this out in primary care. Now, people at home might be watching and thinking, well, what happens with all this research? So let me briefly give a real-world example of implementation. Take the cytosponge. It is a simple test that can identify conditions that are a precursor to esophageal cancer. The NIHR, alongside Cancer Research UK, funded research into the development of this sponge on a string. This year, we will see a new NHS pilot of its use in high street pharmacies, supporting the shift of delivering care from hospitals to community as part of our 10-year health plan. The Government is also developing a palliative care and end-of-life care modern service framework with a planned publication of spring this year. This will be aligned with the ambitions of the 10-year health plan, which prioritises shifting care out of hospitals and into community settings to ensure personalised, compassionate support for individuals of all ages and their families. Mr Chair, this Government was elected on a manifesto to tackle the biggest killers, including cancer. And today I'm proud to stand here after 18 months and say we can see some green shoots of recovery across the health service, with 135,000 more cancer diagnoses within the 28-day target, partly driven by over 100 community diagnostic centres open at evening and weekends and new surgical hubs to treat people faster. With the publication of our National Cancer Plan, 2026 could be a decisive year for cancer care, and I look forward to working with the Honourable Gentleman, the Member for Wokingham, the APPG and my Honourable friend, the Member for Edinburgh South West, and all members, to make sure we keep our momentum into the new year and bring about real change.
Thank you very much, Mr Efford, and I thank the Minister very much for her response, which I thought was very, very, very interesting. I'd like to thank all of the members who have contributed to today's debate. Many members spoke very personally about their own experiences, and I know that that can be, from time to time, that can be quite a hard thing to do. So I thank everybody for doing that, and in particular the member for Southport, who I thought spoke very, very movingly. The things that have come out in this debate have been, and I hope that the Minister is able to take note of all of these things, there's a need for better diagnosis, a need for new and more trials, drug trials. There's a need for sharing information amongst organisations and across borders. There's a need for better screening of cancer. There's a need for big improvements in the workforce. There's a need for better equipment and new technologies. And there is a need to embrace innovation. I hope that the National Cancer Plan that I was very pleased to hear is still probably going to be sometime in February, maybe even the 4th of February. And very pleased that it hasn't been delayed. And I think everybody here is looking forward to seeing that National Cancer Plan. And not just us who have been able to come to this debate today, but many, many MPs who haven't been able to come. And millions of our constituents are going to be looking to see what is in this National Cancer Plan. And we really hope that it does cover all of the things that we've been asking for today, all the things that the APGs have been asking for, all the things that individual members have had meetings with the Minister and other ministers about. And I can only say that on behalf of all of those people who have an interest in cancer, that we really hope that you have been listening and that it is a cancer plan that everybody in the House is able to get behind. And it is a cancer plan that will improve diagnosis, that will improve treatment and will improve outcomes for people suffering with the most awful diseases in this country. Thank you very much for attending today.
The question is that the House has considered less survivable cancers. As many as are of that opinion say aye. The contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The sitting is suspended until 11 o'clock.